Series, same us. Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen, to RaceSpotTV and to Friday Night Primetime in 2023. With the first 3 rounds in the books, we now take to the IMSA iRacing Series, and in a peculiar display of multi-class racing, we witness the BMW M Hybrid V8, the Dallara LMP2 and the GTD's take to the Indianapolis road course for 45 minutes of racing action. And to talk you through all of it is myself, Zach Sweeney, with Cameron Roger in the commentary booth, Iku Mericala behind the scenes. And Cam, it's good to be back. I've certainly missed you. What's in store for today?
Indeed, we've had an interesting last couple of weeks, of course, and as you say, coming to a new series this season with IMSA is going to be slightly different to, of course, the style of racing that we're having before, but with the 3 classes involved, it's going to be certainly a great sort of 9 weeks to finish out Season 1 of 2023, and I can't really wait to see how this goes, of course, with the new BMW M Hybrid V8 coming to this series now as well.
Yeah, its experience so far on the platform has been very interesting. It's been a roller coaster. We've seen it on display a multitude of times, and on a number of occasions, it has really delivered some, fantastic action. It is a replacement for sort of one of the top ends of prototypes in sort of endurance racing. Of course, we only have got 45 minutes of racing action, but that BMW here at Indy, it's a really good combination. Of course, the other 2 classes as well naturally will provide themselves with some good a good recipe for some racing action, definitely, for sure. A good spectacle, absolutely. But in terms of sort of close racing and things like that, drivers being able to maintain a close distance between each other, how successful is that BMW going to be? Are we going to see a large pack of cars?
Well, the interesting thing is, of course, with the transition from IMSA being just a 2-class series with the P2s and GTDs, we now, of course, go to the 3-class. So a lot of those prototype drivers have gone into the BMW, so it's a pretty stacked series.
It is, and of course, we are here on week number 4 to transition us all the way to the end of the season. We start here, of course, at the Indianapolis Motor Speedway. We end at Sebring, so pretty much a full circle in terms of the Americas. In a week's time, we go to Magny-Cours, a new track on the service, then to Daytona International, then to Long Beach, Virginia, Nürburgring, Road America, Belle Isle, and of course, as I said, to round us off at Sebring. So a very heavily American focus, of course, as to be expected. But a couple of interesting venues into the mix there, Cam. Of course, Magny-Cours and with the Nürburgring, 2 trips into Europe. They're going to be ones to watch for sure as well.
They certainly are. Very tricky tracks, I would say, for the multi-class style of racing that we've got, especially Magny-Cours next time out. It's not the widest track in the world, and a couple of tricky chicanes around that track as well. But of course, we will see how that works, because today, in the more modern version of the IMS road course, we do, of course, have the chicane onto the back straight now, which might be a bit of a an opener to what we're going to get next time out there at Magny-Cours. So definitely a very good calendar, I would say, and I can't really wait to see how this one goes along, because it is definitely there's not too many straightforward tracks there. It's going to be a bit difficult for some of these drivers.
Yeah, and you're going to be kept on your toes. Let's say that much. It's for sure a challenge. We say only 45 minutes in the race, but even in those 45 minutes, yes, granted, it's not like real life where you've got 2, 4, 6, 12, 24-hour races, whatever, right? It's still relatively a long time. 45 minutes to maintain focus, to maintain a high speed in sort of a quote-unquote sprint format. And even with that, you still have sort of the stress of a potential strategy element coming into the mix. Of course, the BMW only with 80% fuel, the P2's 85, and the GTD's 45% fuel. It really does force your hand in the sense that you have to come into the pit lane at some point, and couple that with the high intensity of a sprint race with the tracks that we have on display. It's just an extra headache that's really going to sort of separate the good and the great.
Absolutely. The strategy is going to be an important factor. As you say, the reduced tanks, of course, in this series to to make, even though it's only a 45-minute race, to still add some strategy element into that. We're not expecting tire changes, though, but the amount of fuel that you take at the start and then how much you, of course, then fill up with at the pit stop is going to be important, because a lap here or there could always be that extra second or two difference that gains you a position. And you will see, I guess, a lot of drivers trying to go a lot longer into the race so that they have a shorter pit stop to the end. But of course, that comes with some risks of how you save that fuel with the lift and coast and such. So definitely a strategic element, even though it's a 45-minute race.
Talking exclusively about the race so far, you can see right now we are in the qualifying session as of current. You can see that Tauman takes provisional pole for the BMWs, not by much though. Barilaro is in behind, just under a tenth, and it's of course Machado Perez and Tristan Iglesias through for the P2s and for the IMSA 23s. How important is qualifying going to be? Does Indianapolis lend itself well to some good overtaking opportunities? Is the race going to be decided here in qualifying? Because it's all good being consistent over the course of those 45 minutes. It's all good really, hitting the nail on the head when it comes to your tire strategy, or not necessarily tire strategy, more fuel strategy. But it all starts here in qualifying, and to have that stepping stone, to be able to go into the race with confidence and the track position as well, surely is going to be an important factor to take into account.
Yeah, this is definitely a tricky track for the way of overtaking, because of course you've got tricky entries onto both of the straights. You've got the chicane, as we're looking there, through turn 5, 6, and then out through the sort of newer final corner, and then onto these front straightaway. That is a very tricky corner, but it's flat out when you're on your own. But to do that when you're behind someone, when there's traffic about, that is very difficult to get a run. So certainly it's going to be an important factor for these drivers.
Yep, and with qualifying drawing to a close, we are just going to wait a couple of moments and then we'll get the grid up as soon as we possibly can. Here we go. Is the starting grid for, of course, the IMSA 23s. In the Lamborghini, it's Tristan Iglesias that takes pole position ahead of Leaf Sebastian, the front row. Then it comes Godoy, Yannick Lapchin, your second row of the field, with Prevost, your top 5. Cameron Evans rounds off the third row of the grid, and they're in 6th place. A little bit beyond that, you can see just over half a second separating the front 3 rows. Then comes Viton, Andre Garin 7 and 8, with Dalla Valle and Philip Harold, your top 10. Coming in behind that, just on the 6th row of the grid, Felignan and Fabian Alix 11th and 12th. A very Lamborghini dominated field so far, it must be said. That rounds off, of course, the penultimate row of the IMSA 23s. Then comes Kuna and the 24 of Daniel. Again, in a Lamborghini, rounds off the 14-car grid that we have got for those GTDs. Waiting for the other 2 classes. Here we go. These are the P2s. Ivan Machado Perez hangs on to that provisional pole position. He'll be joined by Christian Bowe on the front row of the grid, with Valentin Bonney and Connor Hale 3 and 4. Daniel Kraft, Michael Bell 5 and 6, joining each other on the third row of the grid, running their way down in towards turn number 1. Just in behind those, I believe, is going to be Marian Andre, Claudio Maldi, Antonin Titus, and Loris Coirel, 9 and 10. Only a 10-car field, of course, for the P2s, and the same again for the BMW M Hybrid V8. I can tell you for free, it was Aurelien Tauman and Andrea Barilaro, the front row. Leo Corbs 3 and 4. Then it was Stefandis, Charles Joseph Pertoy in 5 and 6. Only 4 more cars beyond that to complete the field. Very, very close, of course. 1 second separating the top 6. Around a very tricky lap as well, it must be said. Andreas Friedrich, Sam Shreve 7 8, with Metallo and James Horn 9 and 10. Robert Towler rounds off the 11-car field. I do apologise for the BMW M Hybrid V8. He, of course, did not, unfortunately, take to the qualifying session. But Cam, interesting fields racked up. Very close in terms of their qualifying times as well. I think we're in for a pretty good race.
Oh, we certainly are. And interesting in this field today, we actually have more GTDs than the other classes. I was having a look for some of the previous results at other races in this series at this track this week, and there often has been the most popular car was the new BMW, of course. But this time around, there's a lot more GTDs for these cars, and if you include all of the obviously the BMWs and the Dallara P2s as well, there's 21 prototypes. And there's only about 2 seconds lap difference between the two, all coming over those, 13 GTDs. So it's definitely going to be prototype dominated, this race. The overtaking of those GTDs is going to be so important. And just the way that they handle the traffic, through some of the tricky corners exactly on the screen. This chicane of 5 and 6 is going to be so crucial. Do you try and overtake them before, or then do you have to lift off and then try and get the momentum down the straight? It's going to be definitely a traffic orientated race, I think.
Yeah, for sure. It's one that you are going to want to have to take an air of caution with, as we say. Only 45 minutes, but a big discrepancy in terms of the prototypes and the GTDs are going to mean they are going to have to lap each other at some point, maybe multiple times over the course of this race, because the Indianapolis road course isn't the longest in the world, and yeah, as we say, those prototypes have got a pretty good advantage over over those GTs. We'll have to wait and see as to what this race has in store for us. They are at the moment under the formation lap behind the iRacing safety car, getting ready to go, pumped up and raring, you know, just settling in. I think the formation lap is a great way to just brush off those pre-race nerves.
Yeah, it's a good way to settle yourself into the race. Doesn't matter if it's a sprint race or even, you know, a 24-hour race. Of course, that is coming up towards the end of this month as well. It's going to be a very intense race. And you just need to settle yourself. And sometimes these sort of 2-3 minutes rolling around behind the pace car is a good way to just calm yourself down. Of course, with loads of these BMWs as well, we have to look out for, because a lot of the standard liveries going around there. So we'll do our best to try and keep up with which drivers are, of course, making the moves. But rolling starts can always be an interesting one into turn number 1.
Yeah, for sure. You've got to stay on your toes, and just make sure you can keep everything clean. I think you've got a long race, plenty of opportunity to make those places up. But again, races can be won or lost on the opener lap. You've got to take your chance, but you've also got to exercise a bit of caution. It's Talman and Barillaro that round off your front row for the BMW M Hybrid V8s. Leo and Corbs just in behind in 3 and 4, and already getting a very early jump. We're underway for 2023 here on Friday night prime time at the Indianapolis road course. The green flag is waved, and already some moves trying to be made up. Barillaro and Leo running side by side down and towards the opening corner. Talman trying to hold firm, bit of side by side in the background. Everyone just trying to keep their noses clean for the moment, but Talman keeping, oh wait, well no, forget that. Off into the gravel trap, or onto the tarmac, onto the runoff goes. That is Andreas Friedrich, accompanied with a couple of others. They come right into the mix of the leaders of the P2s. You can see Machado Perez, Christian Bow opening the front two for that particular field, but open and lap carnage here at Indianapolis. That is not what you want to see, in a scary sight for the front runners in P2.
Absolutely, three-way issue, I should say, between Tauler, Friedrich, and Petit as well, all having issues there in your BMW category, with Perez still leading the way in the LMP2s from Christian Bow. As we come back, is that in Iglesias there? Actually, he was on pole position, wasn't he? So he's lost out to Sebastian, who's got himself up into the lead of the GTDs.
Yeah, great start, and already pulling nearly a second clear. The opening launch for a lot of these cars have been of staggering importance, it must be said, and leave Sebastian really making the most of these opening moments. But Tristan Iglesias has got his work cut out for him to keep the Porsche of Yannick Lapchin just in behind. Same too with Godoy and Philip Harold as well, just in behind them. Back to the front for the overall field in the BMW M Hybrid V8s. We've got Aline Talman that still leads the way. Andrea Barillaro just in behind there as well. And at the moment, chilling in the slipstream, not really putting Talman under too much pressure, but just doing enough, I think, to stay in the slipstream, to stay in the rearview mirror. And I think at this stage of the race, that's all he wants to do.
Yeah, they need to try and have a clean opening part of the race, because of course that gets you away from the mid-pack of your class. And this is the important laps as well for these, especially in the BMW and the GTP category that we've got for 2023. This is the only clean laps of the race. It's going to be maybe 5 or so laps before they catch up to the back of the GTD field. So this is the only point of the race where they've got clear track ahead of them.
Yeah, they've got to make the most of it, and maybe use this opportunity to make moves now, or wait for the carnage of the lap traffic to play a factor. Again, it's driver by driver. They'll come into this race with a bit of a mindset as to what they want to do, but as it stands, it is Talman and Barillaro that fairly comfortably lead the way, though you've still got Leo there in the mix. But I think as this race progresses, we are going to see this develop more and more into maybe a 3-horse race at the front. We'll have to wait and see how the strategy element comes into play, because yes, granted, only a 45-minute race, only sort of fuel being topped up and things like that. But despite that, there is still a lot of elements to take into a factor. This is a replay of that opening lap, following with Robert Towler down in towards turn 1. Just that concertina effect, way too late on the brakes, and it was such a sudden snap, wasn't it? It was just, I'm fine, I'm fine, I'm fine. Then the rear brakes were just like, nope, not dealing with this anymore, and unfortunately just sent around there. That was an unfortunate incident, it must be said.
Yeah, maybe just cold brakes, maybe something to do the regen as well. I haven't dived into it too much from a driving perspective yet on this car, but certainly, yeah, just almost pulling the handbrake on that car. And unfortunately, the people that he took out ahead of him, he wasn't actually directly battling either. That wasn't the car he was trying to overtake, just skittled into Frederick and Petit. All three of those drivers now at the back of the field. Towler actually out of this race as it stands. The other two still either being towed back or getting repairs in the pit lane. So that is not going to be a nice way to start the race. But Talman at the front, he's going to be loving this because he's been leading it. And as it stands, the top three are starting to pull away. They are the only drivers in the 1-minute 13s. The rest of the BMWs in the 1-minute 14s. So quite a big differential with those top three.
Yeah, just looking at it, and it's not even like they're just scraping into the 13s. No, they're convincingly in. On that last lap, of course, Talman was a 13.5, Barillara a 13.5, Leo a 13.3, but Jan Korbs with a 14 dead. It's a good half a second discrepancy between the top three and the rest of that BMW field. So yeah, they have clearly got a pretty sizable advantage. Looking to the P2s now, you can see Ivan Machado Perez and Christian Bow themselves as well pulling away from the rest of the field. Machado Perez, in fact, even pulling away from Christian Bow as well. But they've got a fairly sizable margin. I mean, just under a couple of seconds to Valentin Boni is Christian Bow. So hanging on quite well. A battle not so close between some of the guys is this fight in the GTDs. Tristan Iglesias able to get back in front of Life Sebastian in that Lamborghini. Now leads the way, reclaims his reign at the top of the timesheets. How long is that going to stand though? Because the more these guys fight, the more the likes of P3, P4, P5 get brought back into the mix.
Yeah, looks like a move into turn 1 from Iglesias there. Just overtaking before we jumped to that camera shot as well. So a battle between the two Lamborghinis. And an interesting one is, of course, just how the sort of numbers work as well. And I wonder if that number 10 there, Sebastian Leaf, is showing he's a slightly lower I-rated driver, but still being up towards the front, just showing you that you can, of course, outperform yourself potentially. But Iglesias there starting to pull away a little bit, as the top two are in general, with Lapchin not quite holding on to the top two as it stands. And ironically, in a different car to his teammate leading the way.
Yeah, and I think it does go to show that you can win in pretty much anything. While yes, the Lamborghini is fairly dominant in this field, it must be said. There are still a number of chassis that can go a long way, but there is still a long way to go in this race, and the discrepancies potentially between the different strategies, well, that too, I suppose, but also the chassis and the driving style, the setups and things like that will also come back into fruition. Yeah, Tristan Iglesias really making the most of his pace. I think it was just a poor initial getaway for Iglesias that Sebastian was able to capitalise on. This is a little bit further back between Alexandre Cunha, trying to make a move to the right-hand side of his fellow Lamborghini. That's always going to be sketchy through the very far chicane. Back up the inside. Oh, my word. Has he managed to hold it? No, he hasn't, unfortunately. Bounces off the barrier, or does he keep it out? I think he's kept it out. But always, 9 times out of 10, you are asking for trouble to go side by side through there.
Yeah, you do not want to battle in turn 5 and 6 here. Is it just loses time. And the curb on the inside there, as you saw, is absolutely huge. The inside one, the initial apex is pretty flat, but that second one is absolutely huge. And that's why you see the drivers try to avoid it where possible, especially in sort of the prototype categories where the suspension is a lot harder because of the aerodynamics. But as you see here, we're now getting the GTPs come through the GTD field for the first couple of times. And this is always an interesting one because the GTDs are so close together, you have a lot less room to play with.
Yeah, it can always be sketchy, particularly this first round through traffic. But maybe when I don't think we've actually got long enough in this race for all three classes to overlap. It's always going to be one prototype versus the GTs or the other, as opposed to the BMWs and the P2s and the GTDs. Maybe in a longer race we would see that, but I don't think the discrepancy between the BMWs and the P2s is particularly that hard enough. So we'll forget about that one. But still, the way through traffic is always sketchy, particularly if you're in Baralare's position, who's been able to take the lead ahead of Aurelien Taumann as well. It's scary because at the moment he's been given this lead. He's pretty chill. He's loving life at the moment. 1.7 seconds ahead of Rolex Town. And we're going to have a bit of a replay as to how this has come about. Down and towards turn one, already approaching a bit of traffic. Defensive went Taumann. Outside line for Baralari, trying to get the up and under. Maybe a bit of contact. This is a fight that's going to rage on for quite some time, but again proves how the traffic can play such a big factor. Was straight on it to the inside of the final part of turn three. Both ends of that poor little Lamborghini that got overwhelmed by a BMW to the left and the right. But what a way to capitalize on the traffic there, Cal.
Classic overtaking maneuver around this track. Of course, the IMS road course, as it is now, is fairly new to the platform. But of course, it's been around. This layout has been around since I think 2013 was when the updates were done around here, and that is certainly a very common move you'll see around here. Coming through this flat out turn 3 into turn 4, you can often just have a lot of different lines. It's a very wide corner, and as you see there, the two prototypes going either side of the Lamborghini. And what you can do, especially in a lot of traffic cases like that, is you can really sort of use your opponent. By him diving it down the inside, Taumann on the outside, he didn't have anywhere to go because the only place in front of him was the Lamborghini. So that is how you have to try and use the traffic to your advantage and try and change your racing line slightly to put your opponent in a bit of a tricky situation.
It's all about that quick fire adaptability, is analyzing your situation and making that split-second decision as to what you're going to do, because once you're in it, you have to commit. It's all about that confidence. It's trusting yourself. It's trusting your ability and saying, I'm going to go for this move and it's going to stick. Because as soon as you start to go, oh, I'm 50-50, do I go for it, do I not? And you sort of, have a bit of a look on the brakes, then sort of lock up, and that's when the mistakes start to creep in. So it's all about having 100% confidence in yourself. But again, that's also where experience will speak volumes and straight away come to fruition. I think Barilaro, again, I'm not too sure about either of their experience. They're 7.2k, 6.8k respectively in terms of iRacing. But surely there's been a multitude of different times where both those drivers have done maneuvers similar to that. Some of them work, some of them haven't, and they've used those experiences to say, okay, the XYZ is happening, this is what I'm going to do, and it works.
Experience is king, to be honest, in a lot of endurance racing situations, and that is one reason why, if you see, especially completely on topic with GTP, you see a lot of these manufacturers that have come in, like Porsche, BMW, Cadillac, etc. Who are the drivers that they're choosing to bring into these new cars that they have for these championships? A lot of them are the experienced drivers. They're not all of them necessarily choosing the young guns, the hot shots. They're bringing experience, because when you get into these traffic situations, and especially when you're in such a big field like we are, and like it is going to be in IMSA and WEC in the next couple of seasons, you're going to see that the experienced drivers will be able to come out on top. But is this actually coming towards a lead change? Potentially, no, just Taumann just looking a little bit towards the inside, potentially there, coming towards turn number 1. It's actually a lap car. Might actually be a lap car getting in the way. Apologies for that one, though, because the gap is actually getting a little bit bigger between 1 and 2.
Yeah, and the gap between 2 and 3 is getting smaller. Taumann and Eduardo Leo are very, very close. There is the number 6 machine of Taumann we're following with, and I think you're right in saying no, there's no lap car in the way. No, there is. There is. I'm not seeing things. There is a lap car in the way. I'm not entirely sure as to who that is. That might be Petit. I'm going to assume it is. I can't see a number. This is 33, so I'm going to assume it is, yeah. But Taumann and Leo very, very close together, and the important thing is how quickly can you lap this guy. Of course, he's been quite nice and moved out of the way for the pair of them. However, instead of looking forward to reclaim that lead, Taumann is, he's anchoring down and he's trying to hang on to this second place. He's now looking backwards as opposed to forwards.
And you can get in these snowball situations pretty easily. If you start making some maneuvers, working your way forward, that momentum can snowball and spiral in a positive manner, and you just gain that extra last tenth a lap because you just have confidence in the situation in the car. But the alternative happens when you start getting overtaken and you start looking in your mirror, and then when you look in your mirror, you then miss apexes, you miss braking points, and you get a little bit more nervous in the car, even if it's just a tiny bit. But a tenth here and there, as we know, at this level makes all the difference. And especially in traffic, you have to be so decisive, you can't hesitate. So maybe that is just a factor as well. But it is good to have a battle hit for the top two, as you say. Eduardo and Leo there getting quite close to the back of Talman, but maybe some fuel strategy coming into it a little bit, as we are, of course, expecting a pit stop, but maybe not towards the final sort of 15-20 minutes of the race.
Yeah, usually with prototypes, again, my experience of the BMW is my first time commentating it. I don't have a lot of it. I'm not entirely sure what they usually run, but I'm going to compare it, of course, to the LP2 in the sense that it's around about 40-45 minutes on a full tank. Of course, that would allow, under normal circumstances, in terms of fuel, them to go the whole distance. Of course, they have been limited just a little bit in terms of their fuel capacities, which has meant that they will have to take a pit stop at some point. This is a fight, however, between Daniel Craft and Michael Bell. You can see a bit of ding-dong, oh my word, as they approach their way into the next left-hander. Daniel Craft on the inside, however, Michael Bell goes all the way around the outside, quickly becomes the inside for the next right-hander, still two abreast as they run their way through, and Michael Bell might as well and truly catapulted himself up into the top 5, and with spectacular fashion, it must be said. That, however, the move is not done yet, because the number 7 machine is coming back at him outside line as they approach the next wave of GTD traffic. Outside, of course, Michael Bell trying to hang on, still running side by side. This is excellent racing between the two P2s, and of course for the top 5 position, which is always something you're going to want to try and hang on to.
Crafts is going to have to back out of that one onto the front straight away. What a move and a battle there with Michael Bell. And they've got the traffic to think about, the slipstream as well, coming towards the inside with Crafts going side by side down towards the braking zone. They've got a GTD up ahead of them they've got to look out for and not outbrake themselves there. Bell on the outside once again, holding it there on the inside now, still side by side between the two. Bell once again slots in just ahead, but Craft gets the run up towards 3 and 4. And this could be an awkward one with where the GTDs are as you come towards this tricky chicane off turn 5 and 6. If he can't take a flat out, Bell is going to get a slower run, and then Craft to get the run down the back straight away.
Might have to wait and see. You can see the closing speed of the slipstream. Is Bell going to be able to hang on as they run their way in towards the next chicane? Also a bit of traffic just in behind, I think. Is that for position? I'm not entirely sure. I will, of course, double check, but Michael Bell at the moment hangs on to 5th place and is doing so quite spectacularly. Behind Daniel Craft, 1.4 seconds of Claudio Maldi, so I don't think that is going to be a fight for position, and it is, of course, just between these two. But the more corners they tick off, the more time Daniel Craft loses, so I think that is the position loss to Michael Bell, who really negotiated himself so well through that sort of negotiation in terms of position. He managed to put his car exactly where he needed to. This is a bit of a fight as well, bit lower down between two Lamborghinis in the GTDs, and that is Marc-Andre Garden just having to settle in behind at the 14th place. But yeah, a lot of good battles starting to emerge, and the traffic definitely, you can see, taking big prevalence. That is a dive from one of the BMWs. Fortunately, no contact, so no harm, no foul.
I really thought there was going to be a crash there, but let's have a bit of a look as Garon here. He's actually last of the running cars. Is there going to be a bit of contact here with, is that one of the BMWs and one of the Delaris coming around his outside, losing the rear end? Does it make any contact, or is it going to be like Moses passing off the sea? And it looks like so far it just about is, manages to get off and somehow not having, as we go live there, actually making a move down the inside there, but going way too deep and losing that position. That makes him go back to the back of that field once again. That is Alexander Kuna in front of him there. That's P31 and 32 overall.
Yeah, P13 and 14 amongst the GTDs. So, Alexander Kuna, we saw with a bit of a shenanigan a bit earlier on. Unfortunately, this is the fight, however, for second place in the BMW M Hybrid V8 field. It's between Aurelien Talman and Eduardo Leo. Trying to work their way through some of the traffic. Talman under fire for the best part of a good 5, 6, 7 minutes, particularly over the course of the last few laps, since Andrea Barilaro was able to work their way through. But yeah, you can see that Leo is putting the pressure on bit by bit. And while he's not quite close enough to go for the move, that psychological pressure is setting in for Talman, who, for him, came into this race almost expecting a win. Because, you know, pole position, it's the right thing to expect. However, now, he's under threat for not just the win, not just under threat for losing the win, but for losing second place. That's got to take a hit in his head.
It certainly is, but he can still see the leader, though, of course. Under 2 seconds now. Got a decent run there, actually, out of turn 6 onto the back straightaway. Under 2 seconds, as I was mentioning. And when you get into that situation and you can feel yourself getting slightly closer, it just sort of motivates you even more. The issue is the traffic, though. We saw just how easy the traffic can hinder you, as we're seeing Melito here coming into the pit lane. Is that going to be an early retirement, or is this just one of the early fuel strategies and topping up to go to the end?
Potentially so. I mean, the fields are quite widespread, but relative to him, I'm sure that potentially could be a big move, especially when it comes to traffic. You need to look ahead. Of course, your F3 box, your black box in iRacing, you can see the packs of cars ahead, not just those in your class, but those across the entire field. You know when there's going to be a large train of cars coming, and you need to adjust your strategy to that. Do you come in a lap earlier? Do you go in a lap later? Just to make the most of some clear air and just to not get caught up in that traffic, because the difference between the BMWs and the GTs, let's have a look, 1:15.2 for our leader and 1:23.9 for Tristan Iglesias in the GTD. So a discrepancy of a good, you know, seven odd seconds. It's a big discrepancy, and that is a 7-second loss you do not want to take when it comes to the pit lane. So not only is it going to be fuel orientated and your interclass inner class battles, but also the interclass battles between, you know, the BMWs to the P2s to the GTDs. You need to take a lot into account when you come into the pit lane, and also where you emerge from the pit lane.
And that's sometimes why having a spotter is sort of beneficial to you, because you can work out, as you say, where you're going to come out and then weigh that up with the extra lap. But with the fuel tank, there's a lot of variation of when you can stop. So, of course, you could just run the tank dry and then pit for maybe, you know, the last 15 minutes of the race, or you could then pit after 15 minutes and then just top up the tank and then go to the end. So there's that whole sort of middle part of the race. You've got a big window of when you can work it out. Of course, realistically, you're going to want to run the tank dry and then fill up as little fuel as you can and run the tank dry again, so you're on as little fuel as you can, but you have to work that out. As we come back to the battle for P11, we've got Alex there as well, as well as Daniel in the car 24 in P10, having a nice little squabble here for the lower, sort of middle parts of the GT3 field.
Yeah, not too bad. The fight for P10 rages on, of course, with Daniel Langer Hegeman is what we're going to go with. That's what we'll settle with. Also a bit of a fight here. This is for P6, Maximilian Prevost fighting with a fellow Lamborghini, trying to get the up and under. That would have been very, very clean, very, very tidy. That is, of course, with Andrea Dalla Valle in that fight for 6th overall. Demoted down to 7th is the number 18 machine. However, quickly on the counter-attack, tucked in the slipstream and pulling to the left-hand side. Andrea Dalla Valle under a bit of pressure. Prevost looking late on the brakes, gets it done nice and tidy. Does he hit his marks? Does he hit the apex? The answer to that is no. And Valle back up, maybe trying to go for the switcheroo, and has to settle just in behind there for 7th place. But again, a good little battle. And between the two Lamborghinis, of course, same chassis, same balance of performance, same everything, a bit wide there from the BMW. But it all comes down to the driver. Yes, slight setup tweaks and things like that. But there's no excuses. They're in the same chassis. There's no straight line speed advantages. There's no cornering advantage or anything. It all comes down to the driver in battles like these, and that's what you like to see.
And I have to say, I'm pretty excited how this race is going. There's so much action in the track and the configuration as well. I know it's not obviously the most favourite out of a lot of the teams and drivers, but I actually quite enjoy it out of a lot of the races that we've seen. And this race as well today, we've seen so many side-by-side battles for a number of corners. It seems to really work out quite well in all categories, which is good to see. And in general, for the multi-class racing, we've seen a lot of the traffic strategies come into play. So it's actually been quite a nice addition to the service, obviously getting a big rework at the latter point of the 2022 season being introduced. And this battle, of course, has just quietened down a little bit as Prevost starts to make a bit of a jump there. But we go back a little bit further up the field, and we're seeing, of course, a Lapchin here in that 4th place, and a Godoy has at some point got past him.
Yeah, at some point. And unfortunately for Lanik Lapchin, falling back a little bit in that Porsche and trying to reclaim some of that pace. Of course, still running in 4th place, of course, in class, and trying to make that up onto the podium, which is always a good stepping stone because everyone wants to finish on the podium. It's just a nice place to finish. It's a good achievement, and it's a great way to round off your efforts over the course of this race. Still very, very close, sub 1 second the gap. However, the gap up to Life Sebastian between Federico Godoy is only 1.5 seconds. Does Lapchin take that into account? Does he say, all right, I'm going to cut my losses. I'm going to work with Godoy here. Oh, that was Iglesias taking a hefty bit of curb. But yeah, for Lapchin, does he just work with those around him? Does he say, okay, let's anchor in, let's work together, let's close that gap, and let's try to go for the mutual beneficiary of maybe fighting for 2nd place?
Oh, yeah, working together, it is a tricky one sometimes because you have to have a bit of trust there between the people that you're racing, especially in more of like an open race like this. It's almost every person for themselves, as we're getting one of the P2s have a bit of a knock. I think that's through turn 4. Valentin Boni, they're having a slow run now, coming out of the gravel trap. One of the GTDs coming up behind him. 3rd place as it stands, and just showing you how big the gaps are, actually, if he's able to hold on to 3rd place with that spin, by seemingly continuing okay for now.
Yeah, and just get to the end of this race. Going to take a replay as to what happened to Valentin Boni. Seems okay for now, through the right, through the left. Is it just going to be a case of taking too much curb? Oh, yeah, that is definitely going to send you spinning around off into the gravel trap, unfortunately. And yeah, it's an easy one to make because, of course, through that long right hander, the car naturally wants to stretch out and force its way out to the outer showings of the circuit. But you haven't got a lot of margin for error. You've got the curb, which in of itself is going to be slippery, and then of course you've got the grass, not too far beyond that. And all it takes is just a centimetre of one of your rear wheels to go over that, and you're a goner.
And it's very easy to do on in that corner because turn 3 is kind of, well, flat out, but you don't quite straighten the car before you get to the braking zone of turn 4. So you sort of have to have a compromisation, if that's a word, a compromise of your line. Are you going to continue turning to get a better entry to turn 4, but then you're braking and turning at the same time? Or do you try and straighten the wheel a little bit to get a nicer braking, but then of course you risk going too wide, and then while your car's going left of the track, you're trying to turn right, so you're looking right, and then you don't realize that the grass and the curb are coming up, and it's a very easy mistake to make at that part of the track.
It's why we love the Indianapolis road course. It's a special one, and like a lot of circuits, will spit you out if you're not careful. Like many a circuit on the IMSA iRacing series calendar for season 1 of 2023. And already we can see a lot of pit stops starting to come into play with just less than 20 minutes left to go. We tick into the 18-minute mark. You can see Tristan Iglesias from the lead of the race, same too with the majority of those in his sort of little front pack of 5. However, Federico Godoy leads the way for an extra lap. Only 15 seconds stopped in the pit lane, but we are certainly fermented into the pit stop cycle. Bit of an overcut from Godoy. He's going long. Of course, that is going to mean he's going to have a shorter time stopped in the box because he is going to be taking on less fuel to the end of this race. That could for sure help him out.
Oh, definitely. That one lap could be a second here or there, and in these battles that are so close, that might be important. And of course, while because as we've seen as well, the tyres aren't changing. So everyone hitting is then going to higher fuel, which is slightly heavier than what he's basically had as a qualifying lap there on 1 lap of fuel. So could definitely be a couple of tenths or a second here or there that go in his favour. But Federico now coming around the pit lane, and then we'll see where he comes out. Still a couple of drivers there in the pit lane doing their service as well.
Yep, And not long left to go really in this race. I mean, we've ticked over halfway, and we are, we're walking out of the woods with this race. There, relatively speaking, isn't that long left to go. This is again split with Life Sebastian, who Godoy was trying to catch after. Let's not forget, in that fight for second place overall in the GTDs, coming through now the final chicane. Godoy leaves his pit box. This is going to be a fantastic strategy. It's a long way to the pit lane speed limit exit, so he can get back onto the throttle and punch it once more. It's going to be very, very close. A straight drag race, really, it must be said, between Life Sebastian and Federico Godoy. Is he going to be able to get to the limit line before Sebastian overtakes him? Oh, it's going to be mightily close. However, with the momentum from Life Sebastian is going to be able to settling him in back up into second place. However, look out, of course, for Yannick Lapchin, who might be able to work his way through. There he is in the Altus Esports Porsche, and it stays 2-3-4 as it was before the pit lane sequence, so not really much lost or gained.
Yeah, I was expecting a little bit more of a difference either way, but it looks to be almost exactly the same. So I don't know if that really gained him, or I don't know, or maybe it just doesn't really make a difference anymore. We will find out, because of course they've all got now the same laps of fuel to the end. In the car, the people who pit one lap earlier would have had to take an extra lap worth of fuel effectively, but yeah, it's obviously worked out to be the same. So now it's a straight fight to the end, and it's a pretty close battle, of course, for these final podium places. You're seeing 2, 3, 4 on your screens there as one of the GTPs comes past, and of course we have to then go back to themselves, the GTP BMW class, and it is Barillero still leading the way, but Taumann is getting quite close now.
We've seen a couple of times Taumann bring it back into that sub 1 second range. That last lap, of course, Barillero at 14.9, Taumann at 14.2. Their best lap times, of course, are 13.5 respectfully between Barillero and Taumann. Leo, though, very quick. Quickest of the bunch, I think, in that BMW field. A 13.3. Incredibly quick and latched onto the back of Aurelien Taumann. Could we see a three-way fight for the lead between the BMWs? It's something that we were promised maybe a little bit earlier on. Then the first wave of traffic sort of settled it down just a little bit. Now maybe that fight is being reignited towards the end. Andrea Barillero, you can even see now getting sort of stuck maybe behind a bit of lap traffic, whereas Taumann and Leo catching them arguably at some of the best points on the circuit, and that is for sure going to be frustrating to the number 5 machine of Andrea Barillero, because he's going to be wanting to catch them at good points and minimize the discrepancy that he's going to be losing lap in the traffic, whereas Taumann and Leo, they're going to be like, sweet, we're lapping them on a straight, we're not losing any time whatsoever, and we are gaining so much time on that race leader.
Yes, it's certainly a sort of a balancing act. Oh, you actually see there, Barillero trying to get out of the slipstream of Taumann as well, as Taumann's now within a second. I thought Barillero actually met that GTD at quite a nice point, but overall just losing a couple of tenths as to where we were on the previous lap, and is now going to be turning into a three-way battle. 3 drivers within 1.5 seconds for the lead here at the IMS road course, and we're into the final third of the race. So this is looking to be a good finish, with of course a splash and dash to come for the drivers as well. But who is going to be the first one to bite, and are they all going to come in on the same lap?
Yeah, that's a good question. Is it going to be a unanimous thing? Are we going to see some variation? But I think as soon as Barillero started to defend, started to break the slipstream, he sort of said to Taumann that I'm anchoring down and I'm going to hang on to this first place. But also what it meant is he basically said to Taumann, yeah, cool, you are in the slipstream now, you are here. Because as soon as you start defending, it's a case of, yeah, you're locked in this fight. You're not a case of defending and then being able to reopen that gap again, and already to the inside, trying to replicate what he did a little bit earlier on, lapping the traffic through turn 3 and 4. Now maybe emerging side by side. They've still got one more to lap, and it's still Barillero that leads the way. Aurelien Taumann under a bit of pressure from Eduardo Leo just in behind as well. That was very messy, very quickly, and now looking to the left-hand side goes Leo. Is he going to be able to try and get that P2? The more they fight, the more time they lose to Barillero. Still running side by side. Brilliant racing between the two BMWs, and it is going to be Eduardo Leo that gets into second place. Brilliantly done, however, at a cost, and the cost was that 1.2 seconds to the race leader.
insane how these things change around. But Barolo taking so much risk through turn 5 and 6, keeping up the inside of that GTD. I didn't quite see who it was, but that purple Lamborghini getting absolutely sent out of the way. And I don't think he would have liked that one too much, but Barolaro had to take the risk to try and keep the race lead. And in the end, it's actually worked out well for him because he's now got 1.2 seconds, as you say, because that opened the door to Leo to get involved, which kept Talman busy for half a lap. So that's certainly showing you the risks you have to take as a prototype driver. Sometimes you have some quiet sections of the race, but then all of a sudden, bam, you have to turn it on, have your instincts ready to just make the sort of conscious decision of, am I going to lift or am I just going to keep sending up the inside?
You've got to make that split-second decision. As we said a bit earlier on, it's all about confidence. It's all about how quickly you can make those decisive decisions and how likely you are to get them right as well. Of course, it was a good attempt from Talman to have a look to the right-hand side. However, it did cost him too much in terms of momentum, and going into the chicane of 5 and 6, it's not somewhere you really want to emerge side by side. And unfortunately, it killed his momentum relative to not only Barolaro, but also to Leo, who was able to capitalize on that. And now, after they had to lap that Audi R8 and now fallen behind now over 2 seconds to Andrea Barolaro. So they're going to be hoping for an absolute worldie in terms of strategy. There goes our race leader, I think, into the pit lane potentially. Here's our race leader in the LMP2s of Ivan Machado Perez. Very hot into the pit lane for Andrea Barolaro. That's not a risk he wants to take, sending it so hot into the pit lane, because he was quite comfortable, but it's so easy to get a speeding penalty.
Yeah, don't want to get a penalty in a battle this close, because the extra time at your pit stop is not going to be doing you too well. Eduardo Leo, though, sat on the back of that battle for the top 3 all race long for best part of 35 minutes, and is now using that to his advantage for the fuel saved. He's going to be going an extra lap, but as we've seen with the traffic, that could really hinder your in and out laps more than the benefit or not of the fuel level. So it's going to be a pretty close, I would say, with how this one works out. As you see there, just meeting GTDs at slightly awkward moments. Those tenths lost there could be crucial in this battle, as it's so close between them.
Yeah, the fluctuation between these battles, it's such a little margin. You're going to want every tenth of a second that you can scrape out of everything, so you've got to be on the limit, particularly at this point in the race. This is crunch time. Everything is boiled down to this, because it sets you up for that final 10-minute sprint to the end. Leo goes on for yet another lap in this race, so is he doing himself a world of favours? That does remain to be seen, but comfortable now out in the lead of the race. Of course, provisional race lead. We'll have to see if he's able to emerge in front of Andrea Barolaro and, of course, Vorolin Talman. 25 seconds back to Stefandis. Bit of lap traffic in the way, however, that is going to be to his despair. He's not going to be liking the look of this, but the sooner he can clear it, the sooner he can utilise that very, very quick 1 minute 13.3 pace that we know he's got.
Yeah, that's just where the the traffic in the situation can bite you sometimes. You're not always able to use your full pace, and of course that is not the nicest thing. As side-by-side battles there, that is not going to be helping him either, as this is a crucial moment of the races. Stefanidis coming into the pit lane, as well as James Horn. We've got quite a lot of the LMP2s, Bonnie Craft, Andre, Christian Bow also in. So for the P2s and the GTPs, it seems that this is now the pit stop window with just about 9 minutes to go.
Yeah, they've left it very, very late. I mean, I suppose that is because their fuel tank wasn't taken too far off where they usually are, and they want to go as long as they possibly can. Into the pit lane, though, does come our provisional race leader of Eduardo Leo. P2, as they came in under normal circumstances on the timing tower. A number of others coming in as well to the pit lane, James Horn, etc., etc. There is the man. He's going to be wanting to try and emerge out in front of Andrea Barolaro. This is it. And catching that Lamborghini could make the difference. In fact, he's going to catch it at pretty good timing. But into the pit lane now, Andrea Barolaro has got a couple of corners. Then, of course, the pit straight to negotiate. A long way down pit lane is Eduardo Leo's pit box, and it's sort of suspending us in anticipation as to what's supposed to happen. He's very way along. He's just got to have a splash and a dash. Onto the pit straight, though, does Barolaro. I think it is going to go the way of the number 5 machine. However, emerging, not long stopped at all for Leo. Who's going to come out on top? I think it is going to go the way of Barolaro. You can see there's Leo just in the background of shot. fairly comfortable margin, at least for now, but a big chunk of GTD traffic to negotiate not too far in their future. That is what Leo needs to get back into this fight.
And I think the important part here is also how much Talman has lost, respectively, to his competitors. Definitely lost out overall in that battle. You can see him right at the back of the shot there. Definitely a second or so that he would have wanted to have in his favour. Instead, he's lost it. And your pole position man, as you were saying earlier, Zach, not only has lost first place, but now also second place and is down into third and has only got 7.5 minutes to do something about it.
It's gut-wrenching. Who's that off into the grass? I'm not entirely sure that's any of our guys. Yeah, it's Charles Joseph Petit. Unfortunately, 7 laps down. You know, he's trooping on. He's doing his best. He's getting to the end of this race, which is only respectable. I think that's definitely a good attribute to have as a racing driver. Is no matter what happens, is to get to the end, because in a sense, I guess that is a reward in of itself. 1 lap's car separates the 2 race leaders of Andrea Barilaro and Eduardo Leo as well in this race. They've got to be able to negotiate that P2 as quickly as possible to then get onto the back of Barilaro for the race lead. However, time is not on his side by any stretch of the imagination. He's got 6.5 minutes left to get that move done and 2 seconds to catch in the meantime. It's going to be very, very tricky, and we haven't seen much in the sense of mistakes really from that number 5 machine either.
Yeah, we have not, which is a big one, as that is all off the track for both of those Lamborghinis, battling it out. Was that actually the same purple Lamborghini that we saw a little bit earlier getting absolutely sent to that corner? Is Provost there, and that is going to be up the inside, and that was definitely off the track overtake, but of course, loads of tarmac on the outside of that turn 6, making it stick. And I'm just trying to see who that was. That was a Herald, Philip Herald there, number 17, that he got past. Definitely a wild overtake from the pair.
Great racing that we're seeing amongst the midfield of the GTs, and Maximilian Provost is putting on a pretty good show for us as well. He's not standing out in terms of setting the timing sheets of players or anything like that, but he's putting on a good show. Whoever he comes up against, he tries to put on as good of a fight as possible, and that's exactly what we are getting. Unfortunately, ladies and gents, we have only got 5.5 minutes left of week number 4 of the iRacing 2023 season. It's weird, we're only not even a week into January, we're already on to week 4 of the 2023 season, but I guess that's just how the cookie crumbles. Maximilian Provost still trying to hang on to what is now 6th place in the GTDs. You can see the fellow Lamborghini getting very screwed on the brakes, trying to close the gap as much as possible, and something tells me, Cam, this fight is far from done.
Oh, definitely, especially with the aggression in the overtake as well. That just sort of motivates your competitor even more to try and come back and show a bit of aggression yourself. As of course, racing is it's definitely slightly towards the ego side of things with how you want to go around your battles. No one likes losing a position, and that is why it gets so intense and so fierce between lots of drivers. And Provost there doing a good job to hold on as it stands, though, between the two. 10th here, 10th there, but talking about 10ths, back to the front, 2 tenths between the leaders.
Here we go, 4.5 minutes left, and 2 tenths separate Barilaro and Leo in this fight for first in the top category of the IMSA iRacing series. What a finale showdown we could have to this race. The IMS road course, Barilaro really going to start to feel that pressure, and as we said, traffic gives and traffic can take, and unfortunately for Barilaro, it's taken from him and given to Leo. Who is going to reign victorious? Leo with the pace, Barilaro with the consistency. I don't know who's going to come out on top here, Cam. It could be a case of who flinches first, who comes up at traffic at the wrong points, who just makes it that vital error. Again, it can go either way, and I think both of these guys very much deserve this win. Unfortunately, only one of them can take it.
Yeah, just the single winner in each class, of course, and Leo wants to make that himself. The number 3 machine has been in that 3rd place for so long, managed to get up to 2nd around the pit stop cycle, and is now going for the win. As you say, half a second now between the two, coming up towards the GTD traffic. that, of course, is ever to be looked out for. Side by side between the GTDs, that's going to make it difficult. Round the outside, then through the middle and to the race lead, potentially. That is the way traffic can work. Leo goes to the inside. Does he have the brakes, though? Down in towards turn one. Barilaro is going to be ruining that where the GTDs were in relation to himself, and he is going to just about lose out the lead from that one.
He gave it a good go around the outside of turn one to turn it into the inside of two. But unfortunately for Barilaro, Leo just edged his car to the extremity of the circuit, was able to hang on and get that rear wing ahead of the front end of Barilaro's BMW. This fight is not over yet, though, because Leo needs to take off into the distance, needs to stretch an advantage. And I was going to say, so far he's not doing that, but he well and truly is. That gap now upwards nearly of 0.8 of a second in just a few corners that he's been able to stay in front. Leo, the man on form, and Barilaro, unfortunately, has lost that. He's going to be very frustrated in the way that he's lost that. But Leo doing everything right to analyze that situation, to know exactly what to do, to execute that as well is one thing. Not to just plan out the attack, but to execute it. He's done that to absolute perfection. And with only 2 minutes left to go, I think it's going to be 2 laps at the line. I don't think Barilaro can really do anything more than just hope that Leo gets a little bit too confident.
And they've got themselves into a nice place on the track where there looks to be very little traffic. And that is, of course, a good thing for Leo, because he can just do qualifying laps, 2 qualifying laps towards the end, and try and pull out that gap. And 7/10, 8/10 now is the way between the two. And you just cannot write the timing of these things. We did say in the pre-show as well, traffic management around this track was going to be so crucial, just with the awkwardness of a couple of these corners. And a prime example was that final corner. Leo using it to perfection and just has a lap and a half to go and hold on to this race victory.
Yeah, overall consistency and just, you know, being there and putting the laps in and capitalizing on the lap traffic and things like that. All 3 of them have shown their prowess. All 3 of them have shown why they potentially deserve a shot. But at the end of the day, it was these 2, Eduardo Lea and Andrea Barilaro, that were able to stretch the advantage ahead of Aurelien Taumann. But it was definitely a 3-horse race, because 40.5 seconds back is Yanni Stefandis in P4. But yeah, the fight at the front has been a spectacle to watch. They come on now to the final lap. The white flag is going to be waved, and it's one more lap, one more set of opportunities for Barilaro. It's going to be tough. It's not impossible, particularly with the lap traffic. However, that really has not gone the way of the number 5 machine. Yeah, I think that was the nail in the coffin for Leo. He's just got to bring it home.
Yeah, Barilaro suffering 2 laps in a row pretty much with traffic at a crucial point of this battle, and that is just insane how things can swap around. But look at these top 3, even within the same shot after 45 minutes of racing and a pit stop. But that's wide though from Leo. Is there going to be another twist in this tail as Barilaro comes for him with 1 sector to go?
Oh, not long left to go. The final lap, as we say. Who's going to come out on top? You have to say it might be Leo, but with a bit of shaken confidence, maybe Barilaro can launch something towards the end. I don't want to push a fake narrative or anything like that, but very aggressive on the brakes. A bit too aggressive. Might just hand it the way of Leo, who's got, well, 1 more corner now left to go in this race to see the checkered flag for the first time in 2023 for the first race of the IMSA iRacing Series. Eduardo Leo in his BMW M Hybrid V8, who takes victory here at the IMS road course. Andrea Barilaro a little bit short, unfortunately, in his bid for the race victory. Aurelien Taumann comes home to round off the podium. What a race we've witnessed there. Here comes Ivan Machado Perez across the line to take the victory for the Dallara P217 class. And a little bit later on, we are going to see Tristan Iglesias come across. There he is in his Altus Esports Lamborghini. He's dominated the field, 9 seconds clear of Life Sebastian. A bit of a shaky start, but it's all been amended now because he sees the checkered flag first for the IMSA 23 class in that Lamborghini. Flash of the lights as he comes away through from pole to flag. Tristan Iglesias takes victory here in the IMSA iRacing Series as well. 3 very deserved winners, and here are your results. Eduardo Leo for P1, Andrea Barilaro and Aurelien Taumann round off your podium with Stefandis and Corbs, your top 5, Sam Shreves, James Horn, Thiago Militao, Joseph Perto, and Robert Towler, your top 10. Naturally so, a 13-3 for our race victor of Leo. to take the fast lap, and it was Andreas Friedrich, who unfortunately had a bit of a shortcoming in the opening lap. Did not see the checker flag. He only takes 11th place in this race. Looking to the Dallara P217s, it's Ivan Machado Perez, as we say, from pole to flag, fairly dominantly so. I mean, only 5 seconds slow Christian Bow, who's in P2. Valentin Boni, despite his troubles, rounds off the podium. Connor Hale, Daniel Kraft, 4th and 5th with Claudio Moldi. Michael Bell, P6 and 7. Mario Andre just in behind in P8. Titus and Loris Koidel in P9 and P10. Round off the top 10 for the Dallara LMP2s. Just beyond that will be the GTDs. Tristan Iglesias, what a race for the Altus Esports driver. And of course, for Altus Esports in general, to be honest, Yannick Lapchin there in P4. Live Sebastian and Federico Godoy, a sandwich between the pair of them in second and third, with Cameron Evans rounding off the top 5. The man who definitely gave us a show, the number 18 of Maximilian Prevost in P6, Philip Harold P7, Mattis Viton in 8th, just in behind. Andrea Dalla Valle in 9th, and Marc-Andre Gowron rounds off the top 10. For the IMSA 23, the GTDs. Well, Cam, it must be said, I'm not disappointed at all by that race. What a way to kickstart 2023 for Friday Night Primetime.
Absolutely loved it. That was 36 laps of pure action for most of these drivers, and just really saw the way that this 3-class system can work with the way that IMSA on iRacing is going to be, of course, in 2023, with that the new BMW M Hybrid V8 being an addition to the already great lineup of the Dallara P2, and then, of course, the GTDs as well. So a great way to start the year, and I can't wait to see how that is going to continue throughout the rest of Season 1, as, of course, we'll now follow the IMSA iRacing series all the way to March.
Yeah, I can't wait. 9 weeks left to go, of course, for this, for season 1 of 2023. We talked through 4 seasons of Friday Night Primetime over the course of 2022, and it must be said, I'm very, very glad to be back for 23. In a week's time, we'll take to week number 5 at the Magny Cours Circuit over in France. Same time, of course, 9:15 GMT, of course, in PM, January 13th, 2023. Put it in your diaries, put it in your calendars, whatever. Make sure you are there, because if we have anything close to what we showed here at the Indianapolis Motor Speedway for the IMSA iRacing series, it's going to be one to watch. It's been myself, Zach Sweeney, and Cameron Roger talking you through all the action with Iku Merikala, trying to keep up with the a lot. Let's put it that way, in the bluntest way possible. A lot of action to keep up with over the course of the last 45 minutes of racing action. 3 categories, 3 very deserved winners, 3 very deserved podiums as well. But it's all left to be unfolded over the course of the next 9 weeks, and we'll be here to talk you all through it. Until then, take care, enjoy your time, and make sure you join us back in a week's time. As we say, we'll see you soon, and bye-bye.